Hi, and welcome to this week's Some Assembly Required video blog. I'm Sarah Hammerker, and I'm glad you joined me. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about church and kids. And I'm going to explain a little bit kind of our family philosophy, just to give you an idea of how you can think about church and your kids. Now, we all know that it's important for our kids to go to church. As Christians, we're called to raise our children in the faith, and one of the ways we do that is by attending church. However, I want you to think about why you want your kids to attend church. What is your purpose? Now, I think your purpose should be, because I think this is what we're all called to do be as Christians, is to grow in their faith. Even if they haven't professed faith in Jesus yet, you are still treating them as if they are part of the family of God, and bringing them to church is one way that we do that. There are many churches, I say nearly all evangelical churches, that have children's programs. Now, these in and of themselves are not bad things, but I want you to think about how that plays into your family and family worship. We happen to think that it's very important for families to worship together, that for everyone to hear the sermon and to be able to talk about it later, to be able to discuss deep issues. Now, here are some of the reasons that people don't have their children sit through the sermon with them. One, they think they're too young. Two, they think the children will not be able to understand the sermons. Three, they can't sit still for more than 10 minutes. 4, there are plenty of wonderful children's church opportunities, and they think it's fun and exciting, and their kids love to go to church, and they love to go to children's church, and they think if they make them sit in a boring sermon that they will not love God. I mean, these are things I've heard. Let me address these one by one. First of all, they think your kids are too young. Our children, starting around age 2, started sitting through part of the sermon. By age 3, they were sitting through nearly the whole sermon. And let me just say, our church goes an hour and a half. The sermon is 45 minutes or longer sometimes, and everything else, it's about a 90-minute sermon, and we're expecting them to sit 90 minutes in the chair with us. And I'm going to get to how we make that happen in a minute. 2, they won't understand the sermon. Kids understand a lot more than we think they do. They understand that they can understand high concepts of God. I've been amazed at some of the questions my kids have asked after listening to a sermon. Deep questions, questions that show that they're thinking and growing in their knowledge of God. So you can help your child break down a sermon so they understand it. There is truth in scripture and in sermons that our kids can get. What if they can't sit through a sermon? They can only sit for 10 minutes. Well, you train them. And this is going to take baby steps at first if you've never done this, but it can happen. Here's how we do it. So I said that our children by age 3, 3.5, were sitting through the whole sermon. Now, this just wasn't magic. We didn't expect them to sit and do nothing. We packed a church bag. It was our go bag. It was a little cloth bag that I made for them. You don't have to make them. You can just use any kind of bag you want. I've seen parents do little backpacks for them. And in that are quiet things for them to do. Coloring books with crayons, because colored pencils, tips snap. And markers get everywhere. Crayons, safe bet. Lace-ups, those little things that you can draw like shoelaces through. Little magnet paper dolls. Well, not paper dolls, but magnet dolls. Little quiet things like that. And then you start training them. You tell them, we're going to sit through the sermon. You lay out your expectations at first, and then you train them. And when they're noisy, you take them out and you remind them, no, we have to be quiet. Let's go try again. So, start out with a low expectation of your children are going to sit through the song service, maybe 30 minutes of the service before they go to children's church. Start small. Do that for a couple months. Build it up. Let them know that you don't expect them to be perfect, And there are many times when our children embarrass the heck out of us. Let me tell you, we've had many times when we've had to take a squalling child out of the sermon, but everyone's doing it. So we have that support system there as well. So that really helps too. So just baby steps, practice steps. What am my kids are going to think it's boring because children's church is so exciting. What is that telling them about church? Should church be exciting with bells and whistles? I don't really think it should be. And I know I'm the minority here. I understand this. But should it really be flashy, exciting? No, I don't think it should be. Doesn't mean it has to be totally boring. No. But I think there needs to be an expectation of why we're at church. We're not at church to be entertained. Let me say that again. We do not go to church to be entertained. So if your child is going to church expecting to be entertained, then there's something off already. So I encourage you to rethink why you're going to church. It's to learn and grow in our knowledge and love of God. That is why we go to church. And because we are called to, in Scripture, to fellowship with other believers, imperfect believers. So I encourage you to rethink why you're going to church and rethink what you want your kids to learn from church. I think one of the reasons, and this is totally unscientific of me, I think one of the reasons there is somewhat a crisis in a lot of churches where young people graduate and they don't go back to church. I think it's because we haven't taught them really what church is all about. They see it as more an entertainment aspect of it. Oh, I'm fun and entertained, and well, I don't need that. I get entertainment from watching Netflix on my phone. Why do I need to go to church? We've kind of had that disconnect. Now, my children may certainly grow up and decide not to attend church. I am perfectly aware of that because it's not me who does the saving, it's God. But I want to give them a hunger to go to church, the ability to know that church speaks to them, that when the pastor is unpacking doctrine from the Scripture, that is important to them in their life. Now, one of the reasons that, one of the ways you can help your children, especially your older kids, do this is by taking notes. We take notes because we have a discussion after our sermon and the kids get to talk about it with their own like little Sunday school classes. So we take notes, and then after church, we talk about it around the Sunday dinner table. We said, what did you learn today? What do you think was the point? How can we apply it? We make it seem less of something we just heard at church and more of something that they can apply to your life. I hope this has given you some things to think about. I would love to hear your comments on what's worked, what's not. And, you know, if there's a lot of questions, let me know. I'm happy to talk about this further in another video or an article on my website. So think about church. Think about how we're going to encourage our kids to love church. Thank you for joining me today. I hope I've given you some good things to think about. Again, my name is Sarah Hammaker, and this is Some Assembly Required video blog. I hope you'll join me next week.